Unfortunately, Ross Perot has died at age 89 from leukemia. Now, I imagine all of you are familiar with who Ross Perot was. He was a former presidential candidate and self-made ragged riches billionaire. He grew up during the Great Depression. He was one of those types, and I would dare call him the father of modern American populism because you look at a lot of his positions. He ran in the 1992 election against Clinton and Bush. Of course, Bill Clinton won that. Now, people always say, oh, he cost George Bush the election. He did not cost George Bush Sr. the election. George Bush Sr. shot himself in the foot in the 92 election. That's a topic for a different day, though. But Ross Perot, despite not carrying any states, still managed to pull 19% of the popular vote, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Now, he went on to found the Reform Party, which was sort of a third positionist American populist party. For example, that's the party Pat Buchanan ran on in the year 2000. And that was also the party that was, coincidentally enough, David Duke endorses Pat Buchanan. And all of a sudden, the party falls apart after 2000. So, no coincidences there. I mean, they were picking up governorships. I know Jesse Ventura, he's a bit of an odd man himself, but he became governor of Minnesota on a Reform Party ticket. There were a few other people who actually won some seats. I mean, the Reform Party still exists today. I mean, I'm not sure who the leadership is, but point being is he ran for president in 92. He was skeptical of American trade policy. He was more or less, he knew what was going on with immigration. He was also skeptical of the Gulf War. He questioned why we were supporting Saddam Hussein, then all of a sudden turn on him. He also ran in the 96 election where he only managed to win about 8% of the vote with his new Reform Party. But point being is, he was an influential figure in American politics. Actually, early on in the 92 election, he was leading in the polls. But you listen to a lot of his 1992 campaign rhetoric with the skepticism on trade, on American foreign policy, on the immigration system. Didn't really touch on social issues. It was very. It would remind you of what 2016 Donald Trump would have said, or what someone like a Pat Buchanan would have said, even though maybe a bit more moderated than a Pat Buchanan. And he was coming from outside Washington, no political experience. So that was another appeal. Even though the funniest thing was that he was only like 5'6", yet he would just go around on the stage. And actually, the screenshot I have right here is his campaign ad took the form of infomercials that played on, I believe it was like right after primetime television, like 8:30, 9 o'clock, where he wouldn't just like put out like these small ads about like, oh, look how great I am, or oh, look how terrible my opponent is. Like right here, I have him from a half-hour infomercial explaining the budget and the deficit and debt in terms that your average American could understand. It's not like he's giving some university level lecture. No, he's sitting down in front of the blue collar American telling him this, this, and this is my plan. Now, there was no way he could have ever become president. I don't see it, and honestly, maybe it was for the best because maybe I mean I hazard to guess that at this point, even someone like a Ron Paul or Pat Buchanan, even back in the 90s, would not have been enough to fix the system. It was too far entrenched, and I think it honestly would have, in a funny way, ruined them. I mean, look at how fast they got to Trump, who had no political experience. And people compared Trump to Ross Perot, oh, no political experience, billionaire, sort of speaks off the cuff, speaks to the common man. So, again, Ross Perot, despite the fact that he never held political office, despite the fact that he still lost the election both times, he still managed to make an impact on American politics where Republican, Democrat, Independent, everyone liked Ross Perot. I mean, a lot of people considered voting for him. Of course, they usually ended up going with the partisan choice, which was Clinton or Bush, or, of course, Clinton and Dole in 96. But point being is, I don't think there was really anyone out there with a negative opinion of Ross Perot. He was the everyman. He was like Trump but less boisterous. I would say he was probably a smarter version of Donald Trump. And just to end this little video about honestly a great American, I would say he was one of the last great Americans, and unfortunately lost him. I want to play a clip about his from the 1992 debate about his trade policy and how honestly prophetic it was. So I'll leave you out with that.
That's right at the top of my agenda. We've shipped millions of jobs overseas, and we have a strange situation because we have a process in Washington where after you've served for a while, you cash in, become a foreign lobbyist,
It's buffering.
make $30,000 a month, then take a leave, work on presidential campaigns, make sure you got good contacts, and then go back out. Now, if you just want to get down to brass tacks, first thing you ought to do is get all these folks who've got these one-way trade agreements that we've negotiated over the years and say, fellas, we'll take the same deal we gave you. And they'll gridlock right at that point because, for example, we've got international competitors who simply could not unload their cars off the ships if they had to comply. You see, if it was a two-way street, just couldn't do it. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. So if the people send me to Washington, the first thing I'll do is study that 2,000-page agreement and make sure it's a two-way street. One last point here. I decided I was dumb and didn't understand it, so I called a who's who of the folks who've been around it, and I said, why won't everybody go south? They said, we'll be disruptive. I said, for how long? I finally got them up for 12 to 15 years, and I said, well, how does it stop being disruptive? And that is when their jobs come up from $1 an hour to $6 an hour and ours go down to $6 an hour, then it's leveled again. But in the meantime, you've wrecked the country with these kinds of deals. We've got to cut it out.
Thank you, Mr. Perot. I see that the president.
And that was Ross Perot. Again, just completely prophetic. That was 1992. And I would say, to borrow his words, we did see that giant sucking sound between America and Mexico. So, great American hero. May he rest in peace. Thank you guys for tuning in, and goodbye.